Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of eDiscovery After Hours. My guest today is Sheila Grela. We had an awesome conversation. We talked all about how she became an accidental media mogul during COVID with her virtual lunches. We talked about her love of classic movies and all that entails, and the fact that she met her husband at 15 years old. And how they, the whole high school sweetheart story. So it was a great conversation. I think you'll really enjoy it. Today's sponsor is Discovery Master. When you are tracking multiple document review projects, whether you've got multiple projects going on in the same instance, or you have projects spanning multiple hosting parties, a server, rel one, wherever the data may live, you can see everything with one login. Check out www.discoverymaster.co. Thanks for tuning in.
Time.
You don't know how to drink, your whole generation.
Drinks on the house.
Yes, sir.
No, wait a second. Drinks are 50% off.
Right.
No, wait a second. Double the price of everything.
And I work only 16 hours a day.
A union man only works 8 hours a day.
I belong to 2 unions.
And now, eDiscovery After Hours with your host, Ryan Short.
Sheila, thanks for joining me on eDiscovery After Hours. Cheers.
Yes, cheers.
All right.
We're both using our Rockstars to keep busy.
I'm telling you, I am a loyal man, Sheila. And so I feel like I'm cheating right now because I'm a 5-hour energy guy. So this whole Rockstar path you're taking me down, I mean, this is a new thing. Oh, it's actually like it's pink. Look at that. Can you see that?
Which flavor you got?
I don't know. Pure Zero Punched.
Yeah, that's good. I have the Recovery, which has got few more calories in it, but it's and it's got supposedly a little more vitamin B stuff. I don't know if that's true.
So I owe you a debt of thanks, because we were supposed to record this last week, but one of my daughters came home with a cold, and so I didn't have a voice, and so we pivoted. However, when we were supposed to record, you said we're going to do Rockstar because I have to work later this evening. I said, sure. And then tonight I said, so are we going to do something, a little bit more relaxing? And you go, nope, I have a murder mystery party to get to. We're doing Rockstar.
Yeah.
So it seems you also are loyal.
Yes, loyal. Yes, definitely loyal to my Rockstar.
I love it. So we were talking off camera about how this is the first time that we've actually had a conversation. Ray and I gave a presentation to SIFPA, and you, I think the LA Paralegal Association may have joined. I don't remember which other org was there. But we had a brief interaction there. But I feel like this is like the last corner of the eDiscovery internet world that you haven't joined yet. So I'm very grateful to have you.
Thank you. I'm not sure that that's the case, but I really did enjoy your presentation. And I do remember us engaging with the, hey, I want you as a guest on the show, and you've arranged to do that. So I am really looking forward to it. The relief for the paralegals in the pandemic of able to engage with other people once a week has really been quite a relief and very insightful for people. We've had everyone from Angela King came in and talked about teamwork, and she's a powerhouse from Denton's. Then we also had several other people that Mary Mack and Kaylee came in, and they were just fabulous. They're always fabulous. And
that's Haley's patented adjective, is fabulous, by the way.
It's got me saying it now. Yes, I admit it. I did not say fabulous that much before I met Kaylee. Now I say it all the time.
Yeah. Did you start the show after COVID as a way to connect, or is this something that had been previously an institution?
No, what happened is COVID actually started in March or April of 2020.
Yep.
Then we weren't sure how we were going to handle the mixers And previously the mixers were at a location and I was membership director, and it was all about engagement. Whether we had a vendor come in and provide drinks or whatever we did, it was about engagement. So we didn't have anything happen in April or May. And then June came around and I'm like, we can't skip it. Can we just do something virtual? So we did. And to my shock, there were almost as many people in the virtual as there were coming in person. And we had people who had children and were in the East Coast who had come because it was a convenient time for them after the kids were asleep. And that was kind of interesting. So we had a lot of people who were like, this is great because we don't get to talk to anybody. And so the conversation went the entire time. And there were a few little notes in the chat asking, and everybody was in agreement that they felt like the attorneys and the office managers and the other supervisors didn't have a lot of time to talk to them. And the engagement they normally had from coming to work had dissipated. Plus, you also have the issue that no one is motivating you because there isn't a reason to be motivating you when they're not working with you. So even if you talk to your spouse or your children or anyone else, this isn't about the professional development. So we decided we needed to do something. And I called Joy from Practice Aligned Resources, which is PAR, and asked her what she thought. And she said, I think it's a great idea. Why don't you run with it? And my response was, I don't want to be the person whose ideas are the only ideas, because I'd never done anything like this before. And she said, of course, I'll be glad to help, and I'll even sponsor it. So she sponsored it, which really equated to helping me by attending as much as she can and making sure that she agreed with the choices that I was trying to make. So we started, and it originally started on Thursday, and about at the end of the year, actually there were like 2 or 3 times where everyone just kept saying, continue, because I only was going to do it for 2 months.
Yeah.
And then from there, from the 2 months, it went all the way to the end of the year. And at the end of the year, we changed the next year to Friday because the San Diego legal secretaries and the Legal Professional Institute wanted Thursdays for their lunch and learns.
Sure.
And so they couldn't attend if they had both things going on. So we moved it to Fridays. But everybody in the community has been very supportive, not only with giving guests and content, but with the marketing and with their attitude. This year we came up with the motto of personal growth through professional development, because you can't separate the two things. Yeah. And that is one of the things we've really been talking about a lot. So I'm very supportive of Relativity's stellar women, and I could list and talk the entire 20 minutes about the things they do for the community and why I really think their attitude is one that I really wish more people would adopt. But I think that the point I would rather make is, if you are feeling low, regardless of whether you're female or male, participate in the workshops, because listening to other people talk about overcoming their problems is an important thing that really isn't happening as much as it should be during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be depressed listening to other people's problems. Yes, you do, because they're going to tell you how they overcame them. You know, you're not going to be depressed. You're going to hear about the failure. I know some of my failures I've had have turned into stellar things. I ran for NALA, first time ever, and I didn't make it at all. So I got a call after the conference from the president, who said, would you mind being on a committee, the continuing education committee? And I'm like, absolutely. And then I'm like, when I hung up the phone, I'm like, I would rather be doing this anyway. And I've been enjoying it. And of course, there have been other surprises during the pandemic because of the ability to engage virtually.
Yeah.
And just some wonderful things have happened. I called it my interview of the triple A's. We had 3 wonderful ladies for Women in History Day come on and let me interview them. And it was just fabulous. When we started, it was like, well, it'd be an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and no problem filling up 2 hours.
That's the way I feel on these episodes. I try to keep an eye on the clock. I kind of lie. Like I tell people, it's like, that's 20-minute episodes. And then it's always like 30, 35. I have a couple of 45ers. So, and between you and me, who, we're both happy to chat to people with whether there's a microphone there or not. We got to be real careful. This could be like the odyssey of eDiscovery podcasts.
Yes. Well, I know that there's a lot of discussion about eDiscovery. I try very hard to focus more on the elements of eDiscovery because the people I'm trying to help are people who don't have eDiscovery as part of their job description necessarily. Mm-hmm. So, for example, legal secretaries, paralegals who work in transactional, they all still need to know about elements of what we deal with every day. Yeah. So I even had someone call me last week who said, I have a client who needs this and I don't know how to do that. And so I was able to tell them what piece of software they could get and, the basic understanding of how to do it. And I feel kind of like one of the problems that is continuing to go on is that the mentality of others training others and others helping people learn things they didn't know is kind of come to a complete standstill, not just because of the pandemic, but also because it's boots on the ground, go for it. Well, sometimes if you take 2 seconds to think about what you're going to do, it makes it easier. Mm-hmm. I'm send out a memo. Hey, we have X. The deadline is Y. This is the note from this, and trying to solicit information. And to me, that particular mentality of let's work together kind of falls apart when you can't have a conversation about what you need to know. So I had an opportunity, thanks to Mary and Kaylee, of course, to ask a manager the question that bothers me. Why is there not office hours? Yeah. Why don't we have the same mentality they have for college, which is if you go in and talk to the professor doesn't go back to the class and tell the class that you didn't know something because they want to encourage you and they want to tell you how to learn. Well, I don't know why we don't have that mentality in the legal world.
Because the attorneys don't have tenure.
Okay, I deserve that one. And I will take it.
I'm sorry. It's a perfect point. And it's funny you mentioned that because I kind of instituted something similar in a previous life before I worked in eDiscovery. But I mean, that was just a perfect setup. So I had to take a crack at the line item there. Sheila, who are you outside of eDiscovery?
I am a person who really loves movies, and I love well-written movies. So I end up watching old movies. And so I'm a Cary Grant fan.
Okay. All right.
And there isn't a Cary Grant movie that I won't watch if it's on TV. And my husband doesn't like old movies, but in the last 20 years, he's learned to love old movies. And
Happy Wife, Happy Life. I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah. When you tell people that plays are not thought of as kindly as they should be, I always use the example of Philadelphia Story.
Okay.
Philadelphia Story is a wonderful example because it's a black and white where Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, and Katharine Hepburn, and a cast load of wonderful character actors are fast talking and being ridiculous the entire time. When you have characters named Mac, the night guard, and other things, and Cary Grant kind of buffooning himself and lots of things like that, you know you're going to enjoy it. But the main thing to know about that movie is that it was actually a play that was done so often that they got down the cues from the audience laughing. And that is something that just people don't understand. So when you go through and watch the movie, if you can just vision it as a play, you can see that their timing is impeccable, and that the things that they say, some of them I think we even say today, just because of the tone that they use and the mannerisms. And I think a lot of the things that happen in plays that suddenly become movies in older movies, we don't realize that that's why there was such a good base for the movie. And it's just, yeah, it's a wonderful story also about redemption, because Katharine Hepburn was out of sorts with Hollywood and she bought the movie.
No kidding. Because this is back in like the what do they call that? Like the star system, the contracts, whatever it was.
The contract. Yes, it was in the late 30s.
Yeah.
Now, what is amazing is you can watch this movie and still enjoy it this many years later, because it's fast talking, it's still relevant, and it's still about people examining themselves and whether or not they should be judgmental to one another.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, there was Philadelphia Love Story.
It's called The Philadelphia Story.
The Philadelphia Story. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, and that was the late. Jimmy Stewart was like closer to the 40s, wasn't he? Maybe he was the late 30s. I don't know. So the golden era of Hollywood's like 30s and 40s, if memory serves. Mm-hmm. When did movies start becoming bad, in your opinion? Generally trending toward bad.
When being on the screen meant having violence be more important than the actual words.
Yeah.
And so I'm not opposed to violence as part of a plot that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I'm also not opposed to deep subjects. One of my favorite examples about writing is, as far as movies, is to say, can you imagine a movie where they discuss the death penalty, abortion, and never use those words ever?
Is there a movie like that? What is it?
Yeah, Cary Grant and People Will Talk.
Oh, how about them apples?
Yeah.
Because when you started saying death penalty, I was thinking, what was the movie with Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins?
Mm-hmm.
Where she's a nun who's helping the...
Yeah.
And Sean Penn, he was the prisoner. Whatever movie that was. You can tell
I know which one you're talking about.
You can tell how big of a buff I am. I don't even remember the title. What's the most overrated? What's 2 or 3 of the most overrated movies of all time that people think, oh, these are amazing, and you're like, writing quality, acting, cinematography, whatever it is. What drives you bonkers?
I think what drives me bonkers is people concentrating on the box office instead of the impact.
Yeah,
I am an impact person. I realize that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but if the purpose of the movie is to move someone and it does, then to me it made its goal, as opposed to how much money did we make. And a lot of these money making ones are a problem only because they chose to make money over actually worrying about whether the content made it. And when you talk about directors, there's always an example of an underrated movie with a wonderful director that the reason it was underrated is because people couldn't see or understand what they were trying to get across. Prince's Honor. It wasn't my kind of movie, but I see that why it fell in the crack of nobody watched it. It was still well written. It was still well acted. It's still well directed, but it just wasn't what everybody wanted to see.
Sure.
So, and that becomes a problem. Is it what everybody should see, or is it, should we get an impact?
Did you see A Quiet Place?
No, but I was told by my daughter I have to see it.
Oh, so my wife and I have been together for 8 years, and I think we've probably seen 4 movies together in theaters. But A Quiet Place is so gripping because I like horror movies, but not gory movies. And it felt like in the 90s and 2000s, those two they just became synonymous. There was no such thing as suspense anymore, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you had like the only two that anybody ever can bring up. It's like The Ring and what's the one, the Mel Gibson movie, M. Night Shyamalan, Signs.
Oh, yeah.
The Rockstar. Yeah. Those are the only two that were kind of like suspenseful, but not gory. A Quiet Place was so gripping and so beautifully acted. And there was actually a priest that I listened to his podcast from time to time, and he did this like theological peeling back the onion, like the family's name is Abbott, and the Abbotts live in silence because of these, creatures that just, it was so cool. And so we still haven't seen part 2 because we wanted to go do it in a big communal setting, but we're just going to have to settle for some popcorn on a couch, I think.
Oh, well, as far as movies, you can always go watch Notorious, which is Alfred Hitchcock, Cary Grant. And it is a wonderful movie because the suspense and the setup and the whole thing is even more intense after you watch the movie and you find out that Alfred Hitchcock was being watched by the FBI because his plot was too similar to things that were going on in Europe.
Oh my gosh. That's wild. What got you into these kind of old classic Hollywood movies? Did you pick this up as a young girl? Did this come about later in life? What triggered? It was
later in life when I would get up with my daughter and she was sick or there was something to be done, I would watch TMC. So I had this one day that I watched a black and white called My Favorite Wife. And and the funny thing about it was there were some ridiculous scenes that were completely over the top, which is, what Cary Grant's known for, but I didn't know that. Yeah. And I'm sitting there watching it and I didn't have time to finish it. I didn't know what the name was. And this is, it was one of those things. So when I went to work, I told this sweet Irish lady, older, who I knew, there's this black and white movie, and then I tell the scene and she starts giggling. And I'm like, why are you giggling? She goes, because that's one of the best movies that Cary Grant did. I said, okay, who's Cary Grant? Then that was like a whole conversation. So then from there on, I started watching Cary Grant movies. Just to get the ambiance of it.
Did he typically work with a certain director, or was he the director?
No, he worked with lots of different directors. Hitchcock, he had a couple. Yeah. I actually think it's 3. Suspicion, Notorious, and To Catch a Thief.
I know that one. Yeah. What do you think? What do you about Frank Capra? I mean, let's be honest. That if you're asking about like directors from that era, he's like one of 2 or 3 people that people still know by name. Do you like his body of work?
I think he is impeccable in his direction. I think people miss the better of his movies because they look for the more commercial ones. One of the best one is You Can't Take It With You, which is also Jimmy Stewart.
Let's say that's another Jimmy Stewart movie. Do you have a Jimmy Stewart impression, by the way? Do you do impressions?
No, but I have a bad habit of I can do impressions of people that I know very well, and I'll accidentally do it when they're not there, and then the person will start laughing and go, that I'm talking to, you can you can do, I'm like, yeah, don't tell them because I don't want to have problems. But yeah, I can actually do impressions of people I know, but I can't do actors. But by the way, just because you were mentioning the name thing, do you know that in Scrooge, his first name was Ebenezer, and that actually means rock of help?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, it's the Hebrew phrase for rock of help.
Oh, that's cool.
It was the name of Martin Luther King's Baptist Church in Atlanta.
I didn't know that either.
Ebenezer Baptist Church. That's the only reason. When I saw that that was the name, I asked somebody, why would they name a church after a character from Scrooge? Believe it or not, I got laughed at hysterically because it was like, well, you just don't know what's going on, lady. And I'm like, no, I didn't, you know.
Wow, that's incredible. I love those little mind meldy moments where all of a sudden the stars align. Oh man,
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. My husband keeps me around because I do have the movie trivia thing down.
What's his cup of tea? If he doesn't come naturally to the old classics that you like, is he more of like a Dumb and Dumber kind of guy?
No, he's science fiction and fantasy. For my 16th birthday, he took me to Star Wars, the opening of Star Wars.
You guys are high school sweethearts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful. How old were you when you met?
I was 15.
15. And at what point did you think, I'm going to marry this guy?
According to my husband, it was like immediately. According to me, it was like about 2 years later. It really depends on who you ask.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then you mentioned you have at least one daughter. How would you?
I only have one daughter.
Just the one. Okay.
My sister moved in across the way, and she doesn't drive. Mm-hmm. And my poor husband has suffered so much. I was really concerned about her, and my husband's like, I really want you and our daughter not to be concerned. What can I do? I said, well, let her move in the complex. I mean, we have a 500 unit complex. And he's like, that makes sense because she doesn't drive. We can help out with her and her two boys. And okay, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Poor man, that was on a Sunday. On Friday, he was meeting with the people across the way to sign a lease.
He's efficient. So
no. I did that.
Oh, I see. There it is.
I was like, don't tell me that you can help me do something because I'll actually make it happen.
How would you have felt if your daughter came home at 15 and said, I just met the guy I'm going to marry? Like, did that translate well to the next generation? Or were you like, no, young man, you are.
That is one of those questions that I really don't want to think about because now my grandchildren are that age.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just play.
And fortunately, I have a very calm granddaughter. She's like, very much a presence and, the old soul kind of thing.
Yeah.
She happens to be drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah.
She's tall like her father, so she's taller than me, which I'm very unhappy about, but nothing I can do now. And she just is very, very sweet. So, I know that her father is going to be dealing with that problem, not me.
And are your grandkids close by?
Yes.
Oh,
they're within 3 hours now.
Wonderful.
They used to have to get on a plane, so I don't have to do that anymore. And if I don't go up often enough with my husband, we hear, you haven't been here, so we go up as often as we can.
I love it.
Yeah, and my daughter treats me so wonderful. I could never ask for more. And as far as my son-in-law, I couldn't ask for a better husband or father for my daughter. So that's always been my attitude. I don't really have any right to say anything about where they live because she gets that. And to me, that's more important than anything I could give her. It's a husband and a father that is a good man.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I can't think of a better note to end on there, because that is like the peak right there. I mean, of life and its importance. So I guess I'll kind of wrap things up by just asking, is there anything related to what we do, day to day that you want to talk about?
I really have been pushing, especially the last couple of months, the fact that no matter what job you have in a law firm, that you really need to understand data. And it's become a subject of discussion for many people because, I don't deal with the eDiscovery. Well, do you ever have to talk to the client about getting new documents? Yes. Well, that kind of falls into the same area. Are you having to learn to use a document management system? Yes, that's data. Are you, and I recently got the wonderful opportunity to do a 2-hour workshop on the UPL, Unauthorized Practice of Law. But before that, and that was with Carol Buckner, who's our general counsel, and she's wonderful to co-present with. But we did one on together on legal ethics related to technology. And one of the things is the vast number of types of software or types of changes that have happened. People aren't really equating it to what's going on. And it's really important. You don't have to know every software, but you have to know how you can figure out what you need to do on the job. And big firms are great and help all their employees, but there's so many, especially legal secretaries who are out, small firms who aren't getting the support that they need to help them understand, how do I figure out what documents I'm going to put on this thumb drive to provide to opposing counsel? And how do I document what's on there? Things like that are simple for you and I because we have to do and deal with other complicated things. But I think that it's really important to make resources for everyone, regardless of what size firm they're at, so they can learn these concepts. And we have so many free resources that's been a subject of almost every virtual lunch. Where can you find your resources? Where can you learn to yourself? Upskilling for yourself. It's definitely something that we want everyone to know, that you have the opportunity and these are the ways you can do it. Yeah. And it's so great that we have so many people to support. And I do look forward to torturing you as a guest. And just so you know, I do give you the questions in advance. Yeah. But I don't have to. If you want to just be surprised, I can do that. But generally, the whole purpose, besides trying to be entertaining to whoever's taking a lunch break on Friday, is to try and get a few tidbits that help people get motivated or learn a new thing, or even direct people to resources. There's a lot of things that come of the lunches that are kind of related to the person who is a guest, but not directly because of them. So there's a lot of things that go on that have been really edifying. I can tell you I was horrible at first. Horrible. I don't even want to go back and watch my first interview. I think that I was like, the entire time. I'm sure of it. And my husband's like, well, why don't you let me have the tape and I'll count your ahs. And I'm like, look, I know that you're a wonderful instructor and I'm glad that you do it for a living, but please don't do that. No, not going to happen.
Yeah, I tell you, having started this podcast now as part of my job, it is, it can be uncomfortable to listen back to yourself. To come back, bring it back to your movie example, right? So many actors say they don't like looking at themselves on screen because all they see is what they would do differently, the mistakes they made. I should have done this with my eyes, this with my hands, this with that word. And man, listening to myself on a podcast, I'm like, it's a good thing that I have other skills that pay my mortgage and provide food and shelter and clothing for my family.
Well, I would never rely upon my impromptu journalistic ability, because I honestly think that it really takes someone who is passionate about getting information out. So just because I fell into this hole because of a need, and I continually tell everyone, never meant for this to keep going. I honestly thought it would be 2 months, but that's because the pandemic keeps going on. And I honestly thought, okay, we're getting vaccine, so we'll stop. But basically, people still need the encouragement.
This is a killer now. It's an institution.
No, I don't think so. I might need to be institutionalized, but no, it's not an institution.
Well, regardless of where you end up, I'm very, very glad that you took the time to spend with me this evening. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, and I'm going to get to my mystery murder.
That's right.